Emily Carver was in her element. The morning sun filtered through the leaves of the trees, casting a golden glow over the lush grass of her family's small property in Montana. At just 16 years old, she was already a young prodigy, known in the area for her rare talent in horse training. That day, she was preparing to work with a rebellious colt named Rusty, who, despite his lovely name, had an explosive temperament. "Come on, Rusty. Today is the day," Emily said, her voice firm yet gentle, as she approached the colt, who was nervously whinnying in his stable. She had a special connection with animals. It was as if she could understand their emotions and fears. With a determined look, she opened the stable door and entered. Rusty was agitated, tossing his head and stamping his feet on the ground. "Easy, boy. I'm here to help you," Emily continued, extending her hand in a gesture of calm. The colt paused for a moment, as if sensing the sincerity in her words. Carefully, she moved closer, creating a safe space between them. When she finally managed to touch the animal, he relaxed a little. "That's it. That's how it's done," she said, smiling. As the training progressed, a group of locals began to gather around the pen, drawn by the young girl's impressive skill. Among them was old Tom, a traditional farmer who had always doubted new approaches to animal handling, watching with disdain. "This isn't going to work, Emily. That colt needs discipline, not affection," he murmured to a friend beside him, but Emily was determined. With patience, she began to guide Rusty in circles, using smooth, calm movements. The colt, initially reluctant, began to follow her instructions. The murmurs of the crowd grew, admiring the connection forming between the young girl and the animal. "Look, he's starting to trust her," said a woman in the audience, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. The scene culminated in a moment of pure magic. Rusty finally allowed himself to be guided, and the crowd erupted in applause. Among the audience, Emily felt her heart race. The feeling of finally being recognized was indescribable. The following week, during the annual horse fair, Emily encountered the opportunity of a lifetime. The stallion chief, known for his ferocity and for being impossible to tame, was scheduled to be showcased. "If you can tame him, you'll be a sensation," her father said, encouraging her. "But be careful, he's not just any colt." Determined, Emily signed up for the challenge. On the day of the event, the air was thick with anticipation, and all eyes were fixed on the large black stallion moving restlessly in the arena. With a touch of nervousness but also confidence, Emily stepped into the ring. Chief whinnied, his imposing presence dominating the space. She took a deep breath and gradually approached. "Hi, Chief. I'm Emily. I'm not here to hurt you," she said, her voice echoing in the silent arena. To everyone's surprise, the stallion stopped and watched her with intense eyes. Emily began to move slowly, making gentle gestures, trying to earn the animal's trust. The audience was silent, unable to look away. After long minutes of tension, Emily finally managed to mount Chief. The stallion, once feared by all, began to move gracefully to the sound of applause echoing through the fair. Social media quickly began to buzz with videos and comments. "Incredible. She did it, and this is what we call talent," flooded the platforms. But not everyone was impressed. In the following days, criticisms began to arise. Activist groups questioned the ethics of her methods, urging her to reconsider her approach. An article in the local magazine stated, "What we have here is a young woman who still doesn't understand the responsibility that comes with the power to tame an animal." Emily, reading the critiques, felt the weight of doubt on her shoulders. "Am I doing the right thing?" she thought, looking at Rusty, who now seemed so calm by her side. She knew she needed to defend herself. But how? The struggle for acceptance began to unfold before her, and Emily was determined to prove that her vision was valid. Emily gazed at the blue Montana sky, the sun illuminating the field, while the scent of fresh hay hung in the air. She was at her farm, with her hands dirty from the earth and her breath quickened after yet another training session. There was something magical in the way the horses responded to her touch and her gentle voice. But despite her talent, the young prodigy felt alone in her fight for acceptance. After the frenzy of the annual horse fair, where she gained fame by taming the feared stallion chief, Emily knew she needed a mentor. The pressure was mounting, and the criticisms were piling up. It was then that her father, Tom Carver, surprised her by bringing an old, worn diary. "It's my youth diary, Emily. In it are the stories of the horses I trained and the lessons I learned. I think you might find inspiration," he said with a nostalgic glimmer in his eyes. Emily flipped through the yellowed pages, absorbing every word. Her father described his experiences honestly, recounting the mistakes and successes that shaped him as a trainer. "You always had a special way with animals, just like I did. The difference is that you have the chance to do it differently, more ethically," Tom added, encouraging her. With her heart warmed by her father's memories, Emily decided she needed a guide. Her research led her to discover a renowned trainer named Lucas, known for his gentle and respectful approach to animals. With a mix of nervousness and determination, she decided to call him. "Hi, Lucas. My name is Emily Carver. I am from Montana, and I would like to know if you could help me understand my training methods better," she said, her voice trembling a bit. "Emily, I've heard of you. Taming Chief was a great achievement," Lucas replied, his voice warm and encouraging. "Let's meet up. I believe we can do something amazing together." When they met at a nearby ranch, Lucas greeted her with a smile. "I'm looking forward to seeing how you work with the horses. Let's do a live demonstration. This might help address the criticism you're facing," he suggested, watching Emily interact with a colt. "You have an innate talent, but it's important to show the world that your methods are based on respect and empathy." Emily hesitated. The idea of presenting to the public made her nervous, but she knew it was necessary. "Do you really think this can change people's opinions? Some of them are quite skeptical," she said, biting her lower lip. "Yes, but you need to be honest and show who you really are. Let's do this together," Lucas encouraged. With renewed determination, Emily began preparing for the demonstration, dreaming of the day she could show her true potential. The date of the live broadcast arrived, and Emily's anxiety was palpable. She positioned herself in the arena, surrounded by cameras and a curious crowd. Lucas was by her side, ready to support her. "Remember, Emily, connect with the horse. Show it that you are its friend," he whispered. She took a deep breath and started interacting with the colt, her voice soft yet firm. "Come on, buddy. I'm here to help you," she said, extending her hand. The once nervous colt began to relax under her touch. The audience watched in silence, and Emily felt the world around her fade away, focusing only on the animal before her. As the demonstration progressed, Emily answered questions and doubts that arose. "My methods are based on mutual understanding. It's not just about taming, but about creating a bond," she explained, looking directly at the camera. "Horses feel what we feel, and it's our responsibility to treat them with respect." As the demonstration advanced, Emily saw the change in the audience's expressions. The criticism began to dissipate, and she realized she was not only defending her approach but also inspiring others. At the end, Lucas smiled at her, satisfied. "You did it, Emily. You showed the world who you are." Feeling more confident than ever, Emily knew this was just the first step in her journey. She was determined to fight for ethics in animal training, and with the support of her father and Lucas, she was ready to face whatever came next. The morning sun illuminated the small town of Plains, Montana, as Emily Carver walked to the barn. The scent of fresh hay and the soft sound of horses neighing gave her a sense of peace. That morning, however, was different. A study on the training method she had developed was about to be published, and anxiety accompanied her like a shadow. Upon entering the barn, she found her father, James, caring for one of her colts. He looked at Emily with a smile that reflected both pride and concern. "Are you ready for the big day, daughter?" he asked, wiping his hands on his jeans. "I hope so, Dad." "The study could change everything for me and how people view ethical training," Emily replied, a glint of determination in her eyes. You did an amazing job. Your heart is in the right place. Don't worry about what others think. The important thing is that you believe in what you do, James encouraged, stroking the colt's neck. When the study was finally published, Emily felt a wave of relief and joy. The title of the article, Positive Results in Ethical Horse Training Methods, quickly circulated on social media, and the response was instantaneous. Community members began gathering in the town square, passionately discussing the research. "Did you see this? The study says Emily's methods are effective and safe," an elderly woman commented, while her fascinated granddaughter listened intently. "Maybe she's not just a rebellious little girl," an older man replied, with a tone of respect that was unusual among Emily's critics. As the days passed, resistance in the community began to fade. Emily decided it was time to step forward. At a meeting in the local school, she introduced herself to a group of farmers and horse lovers, eager to share her findings and answer any questions. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice firm and clear. "Thank you for being here. Today, I'm here to talk about the study that was published and how it can benefit not only our horses but also our community." The skeptical looks did not disappear, but there was a palpable curiosity in the air. A middle-aged farmer raised his hand. "Emily, do you really think these methods will work for all horses? We're not talking about a bunch of colts here." "I understand your concern, Mr. Thompson," Emily replied, maintaining her composure. "But the study demonstrated that the empathetic approach not only reduces the stress of the animals, but also improves their performance in the long run. This is something we all can benefit from." The murmuring in the room grew, and she realized she was starting to gain their attention. It was then that she decided to take it a step further. "That's why I would like to invite you to a series of workshops where we can learn together. It's not just about me, but all of us working together to improve the welfare of our animals." "And what if it doesn't work?" questioned another woman, with a look of distrust. "If it doesn't work, I'll be the first to admit it and look for another solution," Emily replied, sincerity in her voice. "But I ask that you give me a chance. Let's do this together." The idea of the workshops began to spread, and soon many farmers expressed interest in participating. As Emily said goodbye to that meeting, she felt a wave of hope, but at the same time, she knew there was still resistance. To unite the community once and for all, she had a bold idea: a friendly competition for young trainers. "A competition?" her father asked upon hearing the plan. "Do you think this will work?" "Yes, Dad. A competition where everyone can showcase their skills and learn from each other. It could be a way to bring the community together, while also demonstrating what I've learned," Emily explained with an excited smile. James looked at her, a mix of concern and pride in his eyes. "If you believe in this, then I will be by your side. Let's make it happen." Determined, Emily began organizing the event, inviting young people from all over the region to sign up. With her father's support and the backing of a few people who started to believe in her, she was about to take the next step in her journey, a step that could not only change her life, but also the community's perception of the connection between humans and animals. The friendly competition that Emily had proposed for the young trainers was about to take place, and the town of Montana buzzed with renewed energy. The streets were adorned with colorful flags dancing in the wind, and the smell of popcorn and cotton candy filled the air as a group of children ran toward the competition arena. The previously skeptical residents were now coming together around the new generation of horse caregivers, and the enthusiasm was palpable. Emily, with a broad smile, watched the preparations. She wore a t-shirt that said "Training with Love" and was surrounded by a group of young people preparing for the competition. "Remember, the most important thing is the connection you create with the horses," she said, looking into each of their eyes. "It's not just about winning, but about learning and growing together." "Do you think Chief will show up?" asked one of the boys, Tom, with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. He was one of the youngest competitors, and his admiration for Emily was evident. "I hope so. He's one of the best horses I've ever known." "But remember, the real stars here are you and your horses," Emily replied, giving Tom a pat on the shoulder. As the young people dispersed to prepare, The mediation of the competition was in the hands of a longtime friend of Emily's, Jake, a respected trainer in the region. He approached her with an encouraging smile. "You did a great job, Emily. The town is coming together in a way I never thought I would see. Thank you, Jake. That means a lot to me. I just hope everyone sees how important it is to respect and understand animals," Emily replied, with a determined look. The event began with a presentation from each competitor, showcasing their skills in breaking the colts. The audience was full, and the atmosphere was celebratory. Applause echoed as the young people demonstrated their techniques, and Emily felt a wave of pride for all of them. "Come on, Tom. You can do it," shouted Emily as the boy tried to break a nervous colt. The tension in the air was palpable, but Tom remembered Emily's words and, calmly, began to talk to the animal, creating a trusting environment. After the presentations, Emily took the stage to conduct a live demonstration. She felt nervous but also excited. "Today I will show you how we can communicate with horses in a way that is respectful and effective," she began, looking at the crowd. "That's right, Emily. Show them," shouted one of the spectators, and the applause began again. As she worked with a stallion that had been rescued, Emily explained each movement. "Look how he reacts to my touch. It's essential that we understand what they are feeling," she said, as the animal followed her instructions gracefully. The audience was mesmerized, and many began to applaud enthusiastically. At the end of the demonstration, a woman in the audience raised her hand. "I would like to know how you do that without using force. Isn't it a risk? What if the horse doesn't cooperate?" Emily smiled, recognizing the tone of doubt in the question. "Great question. In fact, force is not necessary if we create an environment of trust. That's what really matters. When a horse feels safe, it is more likely to cooperate." The woman nodded, a bit more convinced but still unsure. "And what if one day you encounter a horse that cannot be tamed? What would you do?" "I would seek to understand what is holding it back. Each animal has its own story, and it is up to us as trainers to figure out how to help them. Our role is to be patient and empathetic," Emily replied, her voice firm and full of passion. After the demonstration, a group of young people approached Emily, excited. "You were amazing. Can we do more of this?" asked a girl named Mia. "Of course. I will organize more workshops for you. Together, we can learn a lot about communicating with horses," Emily said, feeling her heart warm at the idea of sharing her knowledge. With the event coming to an end, Emily was more confident than ever. She knew she had planted seeds of change in the community, and the unity around the preservation and respect for animals was just beginning. With a sparkle in her eyes, she looked up at the sky, feeling that the paths she had chosen were leading her to a promising future full of possibilities. Emily watched the rescued elephants at the rehabilitation center, her heart tightening as she saw the fragile condition in which they arrived. The midday sun illuminated the landscape of Kenya, but it could not warm the chill she felt thinking about the horrors those creatures had faced. As she stroked the trunk of one of the elephants, she heard footsteps behind her. It was Amani, with a determined look. "We need to talk about the next phase of our work, Emily," Amani said as she approached. "These elephants need more than physical care. They need freedom." Emily nodded, remembering the stories the activist had told about the devastation caused by poachers. "I know, Amani, but how can we ensure they are safe? What happened to them before is so terrifying." Amani sighed, running her hand through her hair. "We need to be their voice, and if we don't do something quickly, we risk losing more elephants. The poachers are organizing." "So what do you suggest?" Emily asked, determined to find a solution. "Let's come up with a plan. We need to mobilize the community, raise awareness about the importance of elephants. If we can show them that conservation can bring benefits, maybe we can deter the poachers." Emily looked at Amani, admiring her courage. "You're right. Sustainable tourism could be a solution. If people see the value of living elephants, maybe they'll want to protect them." The two young women began to outline a strategy. In the following days, They talked to local residents, sharing stories of elephants and how conservation could benefit the community's economy. Emily used her communication skills, showing videos of elephants being well treated and interacting peacefully with humans. These animals are not just an attraction. They are part of our ecosystem, and their preservation can bring tourists, which means money for all of us, Emily explained at a community meeting, looking into the eyes of those present. Sustaining wildlife is sustaining our lives. Among the attendees, some farmers appeared skeptical, but others began to nod, realizing the logic behind Emily's words. The atmosphere in the room was tense, but there was a spark of hope. What if the elephants attack our crops? An older man questioned, crossing his arms. How can we protect ourselves? Amani stepped forward, with a calm expression. We understand the concern, but coexistence is possible. We can work together to create barriers and protection methods that do not harm the elephants. We need to find a balance. And what if the poachers decide to strike again? A woman asked, looking worried. Emily took a deep breath, determined. If we join forces, we can protect these elephants. We can create a monitoring program where all of us will be involved in their protection. Together, we are stronger. The idea of a monitoring program began to gain traction, and soon the conversation turned into a plan of action. Emily and Amani knew there was still much to do, but they were determined to move forward. They decided to organize a presentation for the community, where they could show the importance of elephants in the ecosystem and how they could coexist peacefully. Let's do a demonstration with the elephants, showcasing their skills and behavior, Amani suggested, her eyes shining with excitement at the idea. If people see how amazing they are, they will feel more inclined to protect them. Yes. We can show how their behaviors are natural and how they can teach us about respect and harmony, Emily replied, already envisioning the details. In the days that followed, the two young women began to work on the presentation. They trained the elephants, emphasizing the importance of care and patience. The connection Emily had developed with the elephants was palpable, and she was determined to show the world that these animals deserved protection. As the days progressed, anticipation grew in the community. Emily and Amani were about to showcase not only the beauty of the elephants, but also the strength of the community's unity around a greater goal: the preservation of wildlife. The sun began to set, painting the Kenyan sky with shades of orange and pink as Emily prepared for the public meeting in the small village of Mombasa. The atmosphere was tense, and the anticipation hung in the air. Beside her, Amani nervously adjusted her hair, while her gaze fixed on the small tent that had been set up for the event. "Are you ready?" Amani asked, trying to hide the anxiety in her voice. "I am. We just need to convince people to listen to what we have to say," Emily replied, taking a deep breath to calm her nerves. She knew Amani's position in the community would help open some doors, but the challenge was great. As they entered the tent, the audience was divided. On one side, those who supported wildlife conservation and the vision of sustainable tourism. On the other, farmers concerned about the safety of their properties. The leader of the opposition, a burly farmer named Juma, stood up and, in an intimidating tone, declared, "These conservation ideas are just a way to take away our livelihood. What are you going to do when the elephants invade our lands?" Emily felt a wave of nervousness, but decided it was time to take a stand. "Juma, I understand your concerns, but we need to look to the future. Preserving the elephants doesn't mean we can't coexist. In fact, it's an opportunity to create new livelihoods through responsible tourism. Imagine the visitors who would come to see these magnificent animals in their natural habitat." The murmurs in the tent grew louder, and Juma did not seem convinced. "What if the elephants attack our herds? We could lose everything. I'm not willing to risk my family's life for a romantic idea." Amani, realizing that the situation was becoming increasingly tense, intervened. "Juma, we know that coexistence isn't easy, but we need to work together to find solutions. Emily and I have a plan. We will show how this can work in practice." Emily felt Amani's warm support and decided to take advantage of the opportunity. We're planning a presentation where we will show the importance of elephants in the ecosystem and how they can benefit the local economy. Amani and I are here to learn from you, and together we can make a difference. An older woman in the audience, who looked to be over 60, raised her hand. But how can we trust that you know what you're doing? We've seen many projects fail before. With a smile, Emily replied, I understand your skepticism. Change takes time, and we need to build that trust. Our presentation will be a way to show not just the benefits, but also how we can work together to protect our herds while preserving wildlife. I am willing to do whatever it takes to ensure everyone feels safe. Juma, still skeptical, crossed his arms. And what will you do if things don't go as planned? Will you leave us in the same situation as before? No, I'm not like that, Emily replied firmly, her voice resonating in the tent. I'm here to stay, and I want to build a future where we can coexist. If something goes wrong, we will solve it together. Silence fell for a moment, and then the old farmer, who had remained quiet, stood up. I know Emily. She is good with animals. If she says she can help, it might be worth listening. A wave of murmurs of approval swept through the tent. Amani shot a hopeful glance at Emily, who breathed a sigh of relief. The old farmer's support was a step toward change. Let's do the presentation, and if it doesn't work, I will be the first to admit that we need to rethink our approach, Emily concluded. But we need a chance. Juma looked at the other farmers, and to everyone's surprise, he slowly nodded. All right, let's hear what you have to say. But remember, our lives are at stake. With renewed energy, Emily and Amani prepared for the presentation, feeling that despite the challenges, the seed of change was starting to germinate. The presentation, which had been carefully planned by Emily and Amani, began with a palpable atmosphere of anticipation. Local residents, including children and their parents, gathered in a large outdoor space, where the vibrant vegetation of Kenya contrasted with the seriousness of the situation they faced. Emily, with her heart racing, watched the elephants she had trained over the weeks, hoping they would be ready for the big moment. Do you think they will behave? Amani whispered beside her, her eyes shining with anxiety. They have surprised us so far. I trust them, Emily replied, trying to stay calm. She knew that if everything went well, the presentation could be the push the community needed to unite against poaching. The young women approached the makeshift stage, where a crowd of curious faces watched them. The sound of drum beats echoed in the background, creating a festive atmosphere. Amani, with her strong and confident voice, took the lead. Today, we will not only celebrate the beauty of elephants, but also their importance in our ecosystem, she said, gesturing to the huge animals moving gracefully around her. They are part of our land, and we need to protect them. As Amani spoke, Emily prepared backstage, signaling to the elephants that they were ready. Suddenly, the tension in the air increased as a group of men, clearly from the illegal poacher faction, began to approach, whispering among themselves. One of them, a man with a hard gaze and a disdainful expression, stepped forward into the center of the crowd. These animals don't belong to you, they are just a burden on our economy, he shouted, challenging Amani's message. And this spectacle, it's a waste of time. A murmur of discontent rippled through the crowd, and Emily felt her stomach churn. Amani, however, remained unfazed. We're not here to argue, but to show that conservation can bring benefits for all of us. Let's show what the elephants can do. She turned to Emily, who signaled to the elephants. With a gentle command, the animals began to move in sync, performing a series of maneuvers that reflected the gentle and respectful training Emily had instilled. The elephants lifted their feet, spun around, and even did a little dance. The audience began to applaud, and the initial tension started to dissipate. However, in the middle of the presentation, the poachers, in a desperate act, advanced toward the stage. Stop this now, shouted the hard-eyed man, pulling out a machete. This is an insult to our culture. Emily, realizing the danger, immediately positioned herself in front of Amani. "Don't do this," she pleaded, her voice firm even as fear consumed her. "These animals are not a burden. They are part of our history and our future." The elephants, sensing the agitation, began to stir as well. Emily turned to them, trying to calm them down. "Stay calm, boys. We're in this together," she murmured, while Amani held her arm, worried. And then, amid the chaos, something surprising happened. The elephants, as if understanding the gravity of the situation, began to move toward the poachers. The crowd fell silent, and the hunters, unsure of how to react, hesitated. "No, what are you doing?" shouted the man, but it was too late. The elephants, now in a solid formation, aligned themselves, creating a protective barrier between the young ones and the intruders. "This is it. They are coming together for us," exclaimed Amani, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Emily smiled, feeling the deep connection she had built with the animals. The elephants were demonstrating not only their strength, but also the trust they had in her. In a moment of pure courage, the farmers who had approached Emily's cause finally stood up. "Enough with the hunting. They deserve to live in peace," shouted one of them as others joined his side. The crowd began to stir, supporting each other. The man who had challenged Amani and Emily retreated, realizing that his position was becoming untenable. He turned and, with a look of disdain, disappeared into the crowd. The presentation, which had begun under a cloud of tension, was now a symbol of hope and unity. The community had finally come together in support, recognizing the importance of preservation and the strength of empathy. Emily looked at Amani, both with tears in their eyes, aware that they had taken a significant step not only for themselves, but for all the elephants and the future of the region. Inspired by the transformative experience she had in Kenya, Emily Carver returned home with a new vision and a heart full of determination. Upon arriving in her small town in rural Montana, she felt that her mission was not yet complete. The lessons she had learned from Amani and the rehabilitated elephants motivated her to expand her work, now focused on the rehabilitation of wildlife, especially wolves. It was a bold challenge, especially in a community that had always shown skepticism towards these animals. In the living room of her home, Emily sat with her father, Thomas, a man of few smiles, but with an understanding gaze. He flipped through an old photo album, memories of farm times and a past that shaped him. "You're thinking about wolves, aren't you?" he asked, without taking his eyes off the photos. "Yes, Dad. I want to help rehabilitate wolves. They play a vital role in the ecosystem, but people don't see that. They only see the threat," Emily replied, her voice filled with passion. "If we can show them that we can coexist, who knows, maybe we can change their opinions." Thomas sighed, setting the album aside. "I understand your desire, but you know how farmers are. Most of them don't want to hear about wolves. They only care about their herds. That's why I need you, Dad. You know all of them. If we can gather a group and talk, maybe I can convince them." He looked at his daughter, admiring her determination. "All right, Emily, let's try. But remember, it won't be easy." In the following days, Emily began planning a meeting with the local farmers. She knew she needed to prepare a solid argument, so she spent hours researching the benefits of wolves in the ecosystem, such as controlling deer populations and preserving vegetation. With a folder filled with data and success stories, she felt ready. The day of the meeting arrived, and the small farmers' union hall was filled with familiar faces, many of whom wore skeptical expressions. Emily stood at the front, her heart racing, but she took a deep breath and began to speak. "Thank you all for being here. I know many of you have concerns about wolves, but I want to show how coexistence can be beneficial for all of us." She presented charts and data, while the farmers' gazes varied between suspicion and interest. At one point, an older farmer, Hank, stood up. "What if the wolves attack our herds? How are you going to guarantee that doesn't happen?" Emily was prepared for this question, knowing it was a valid concern. I understand your fear, Hank. But studies show that when wolves are rehabilitated and monitored, attacks are rare. Additionally, there are measures we can implement to protect herds, such as reinforced fencing and management techniques. Hank frowned, but a murmur of approval began to rise among the other farmers. This was a sign that maybe, just maybe, Emily was starting to break down some barriers. "And what do you suggest we do with those wolves that are already here?" asked another farmer, Sarah, with a worried tone in her voice. "We need to understand wolves and their importance. Instead of seeing them as enemies, we can work together to ensure that our farming and wildlife can coexist. I'm proposing a pilot project where you can closely monitor the rehabilitation of the wolves and see the results. We can learn from each other." After the presentation, the room was buzzing with animated discussion. Some voices were supportive, others still skeptical, but the atmosphere was different. The seeds of change were being planted. Emily felt a wave of hope and determination. "Let's do this then," said Thomas, standing up. "I will stand by my daughter. If we don't try, we will never know what's possible." With her father by her side, Emily felt more confident than ever. The road would be long and full of challenges, but she was willing to fight for a harmonious coexistence between humans and wolves, believing that empathy could be the key to the transformation she so desired. The small town of Montana was in turmoil. Following the recent successes of Emily Carver, the young prodigy, the tension between her supporters and the skeptical farmers was rising. A mixed atmosphere of hope and resistance hung in the air. Emily, determined to expand her institute to include wolf rehabilitation, decided to organize a community meeting at the parish hall. She knew the challenge would be great, but she was ready to face it. On the night of the meeting, the hall was packed. Farmers, their families, and some town residents settled into the wooden chairs, murmuring among themselves. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sound of nervous conversations. Emily, nervous, adjusted the microphone before starting. Her heart raced in her chest, but she took a deep breath and began to speak. "Thank you all for being here," she said, trying to convey her confidence. "Today, I would like to discuss the possibility of wolf rehabilitation, a project that can benefit not only the animals but also our community." A murmur of discontent rippled through the room. Mr. Thompson, one of the most respected farmers in the region, raised his hand. "Emily, you know that wolves are a threat to our livestock. How can you guarantee they won't attack our animals?" Emily nodded, acknowledging his concern. "I understand your point, Mr. Thompson. However, studies show that wolves play a crucial role in the ecosystem. They help control populations of deer and other herbivores, which, in the long run, can benefit the pastures we use to feed our livestock. That's all very nice. But what if the wolves decide that a lamb is a snack?" interrupted a woman with a stern look. "Are you willing to risk our lives and our businesses for a crazy idea?" "It's not a crazy idea," Emily retorted firmly. "I propose a pilot project. Let's work together. If the wolves attack, we'll have a plan. If they don't attack, we can start to change the narrative about them. It's an opportunity to learn and understand." The murmurs grew louder. Emily realized she needed to go a step further to earn their trust. "I invite all of you to come see the rehabilitation project in action. I want you to follow the process, to see how we can coexist." A heavy silence settled in. Mr. Thompson, with his arms crossed, seemed to be thinking. "Do you really believe this will work, Emily?" "Yes," she replied, looking into each person's eyes. "I believe we can change the way we see wolves and find a balance. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm asking you to observe and evaluate for yourselves." After the meeting, some farmers approached Emily. "I still don't fully trust this idea, but I'll give it a chance," said Mr. Johnson, a robust man who had always been skeptical. "If you can show that these wolves are not a threat, maybe I can change my mind." "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Your openness means a lot," Emily replied, feeling hope rekindle in her heart. In the days that followed, she began planning the pilot project. With the help of Amani and other collaborators, she set up a schedule for the farmers' visits to the facility where the wolves would be rehabilitated. The first visit was scheduled for the next month, and she could hardly contain her excitement. In the week leading up to the visit, Emily met with her team to discuss the final details. We need to make sure everything is perfect. I want the farmers to see how these animals are treated and that they pose no threat, she said, running her hands over the papers on the table. We'll show them that wolves are more than just predators, Amani affirmed with a confident smile. They have a role in the balance of nature, and we need everyone to understand that. Emily nodded, aware that the road would be long, but determined to make a difference. Deep down, she felt that the resistance was beginning to break, and that motivated her even more. Let's do this together. If we can change the minds of just a few, it will already be a big step. Anticipation grew as the day of the visit approached. The town was about to witness a new chapter in the relationship between humans and wolves, and Emily was determined to prove that coexistence was possible. The sun set, plunging the wolf rehabilitation project into an unsettling twilight. Emily watched the wolves, now calmer and used to human presence, as a tense atmosphere hung in the air. For days, rumors about illegal hunters threatening the project's safety had spread through the community, but she was determined to show that coexistence was possible. When the first distant shouts echoed, her heart raced. "Quick, everyone to the shelters," Emily shouted, trying to keep calm. The sound of the farmers' hurried footsteps echoed in the darkness. If they come, we need to protect the wolves. It was then that a shadow emerged among the trees, and the figure of a man appeared. Emily felt her stomach churn as she recognized the familiar outline. It was Lucas, a childhood friend now turned into a relentless hunter. Her heart raced, not only from fear but from the confusion that overtook her. "Lucas," she called, her voice trembling with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Lucas stopped, looking around as if ensuring no one else was nearby. "What do you think I'm doing, Emily? This place is a den of wolves. They need to be eliminated before they cause problems for the farms," he said, his tone filled with anger and disdain. "They're not the problem, Lucas. You know that. They're here to help the ecosystem. We can coexist," Emily pleaded, trying to reach the reason that once united them. But Lucas shook his head, his gaze hardened. "Coexist? With these predators? Are you crazy? They will attack our herds. We need to protect what is ours." The anger in his voice made the group of farmers gathered around Emily tense up. Some murmured among themselves, uncertain. "But what if I show you that this doesn't have to happen? That they can be rehabilitated and live in harmony with you?" Emily insisted, her voice now more firm. Desperation drove her to fight for those wolves, but also for Lucas, who seemed to have lost his way. Lucas's voice rose. "How many sheep have you lost, Emily? How many lives are you willing to risk for this crazy idea?" He stepped forward, gesturing with the weapon he held. At that moment, the sound of a fence breaking echoed, and the wolves, sensing the commotion, began to howl in response to the danger. The sound reverberated in the night, creating a palpable tension. "If you do this, you will be destroying everything we have built together," Emily shouted, her determination growing. "Do you really think this is what we want? More blood? More hatred?" The atmosphere was charged, and most of the farmers began to hesitate. It was then that one man, the old Mr. Thompson, one of the most respected farmers in the region, stepped forward. "Lucas, you speak as if you don't know what's happening here. These wolves are not enemies. They have a vital role to play. And what if they attack?" Lucas retorted, his voice full of doubt. "And what if they don't? We have to give them a chance, and not just to them, but to ourselves. That's the only way we can change this story," Thompson replied, his voice steady. One by one, other farmers began to speak up, supporting the idea that coexistence was possible. At that crucial moment, a group of wolves positioned themselves, as if sensing the tension in the air. Emily turned to Lucas, her gaze intense. Do you remember when we were kids, Lucas? How we used to run together in the fields. We weren't friends just because we were from the same town. It was because we understood the importance of protecting those who could not defend themselves. Lucas hesitated, the weapon in his hands trembling. Something in Emily's voice seemed to penetrate the barrier of hostility he had built over the years. And in an instant that felt like an eternity, the transformation began. The group of farmers united, forming a wall of support around Emily, showing that they were willing to fight for this new vision. "Come on, Lucas. Join us." "We don't have to be enemies," Emily said, her voice now a sincere plea. "Change begins when we decide to act together." At the climax of the situation, when everything seemed lost, Lucas looked around, seeing the faces of his friends, his neighbors, and Emily, who always believed in the best of him. With a deep sigh, he lowered the weapon. I don't want to fight anymore," he murmured, his voice choked. The tension dissipated, and a new beginning began to form among the farmers and the community, showing that empathy and change were possible, even when differences seemed insurmountable.